math, okay? So video wasn't going to work, but we'll start here, okay? So remember that, remember our human journey map, okay? This first part says the diffusion of human settlement. What does diffusion mean? Anyone know what diffusion means? Not really distribution. Zach, what are you going to say? Zach, what are you going to say? The movement or the spread, okay? So, spread. The spread of people. Hello.
I'm subbing next door.
Okay.
There were 2 videos we were supposed to watch on
Yeah,
YouTube.
and they're not working?
Everybody's is down.
Great.
So.
Okay. Does she have... All right, so let's get back. I need you focus back up here. Okay, I know it's been crazy. I know it sucked without the internet, but here we go. Okay, lock in. I need you to understand what we're talking about today, okay? So diffusion means the spread, okay? If you want to Snapchat, I will take your phone away. If you want to draw, I will take it away. You need to be paying attention because I promise you will be seeing this stuff on your quiz and on your test in a few weeks. All right, so migration is important. The diffusion means the spread of something, okay? So in this case, we're talking about the spread of people, okay? So remember, think back to the human journey map that we did at the beginning of the unit. Where did people first start? Do you remember? Africa, yep. So people started in Africa, and then where did they spread to? Before they went to Europe, where'd they go to? Middle East, yep. Then they spread to the Middle East. And then from the Middle East, where all did they go? Where, Parker? Oh, what? Here, come grab a hard copy then. Where did they go from the Middle East? Where did people spread from the Middle East after that? Asia, Europe, Southeast Asia, okay? Europe, Southeast Asia, okay? So people spread, right? That is called a migration. When people migrate, that means that they're permanently going to move. They're not going to go somewhere and then go back to their home, like where they came from to start with. When someone is migrating, they're going to move and stay gone, okay? Because if they were going to go back home, that would be called like tourism. Or like visiting, right? You could go visit somewhere, but then you're going to come back to your home here in Frisco, Texas. But if you're migrating away from Frisco, you're going to permanently change your address, okay? So you're not coming back. So write that down. Not coming back. You're going to be gone for good, okay? All right? Makes sense? So migration is pretty permanent. All right? So let's talk about it. How many times has your family moved? How many times have you guys moved? Allison, how many times? Once. Justin says 4. How many?
4. 7.
7. Kylie's moved 7 times. Brooke, what do you have up over there? 8. You moved 8 times? How old are you? 14? That's crazy. Who else? How many times? 3? 4. Okay. Monica, how many times? 5 times. Holy crap. I think I moved 5 times, but a lot of that was in college. Okay, so a lot of you, Kaylin, how many times have you moved? What? Yeah, it counts. You've been in 12 houses? What the heck? That's a lot. That's like once a year. That's stressful. Okay, so think about it. You guys don't have to, you don't have to say this out loud, but think about if your move was for a traumatic reason, which means like maybe something bad happened, or was it exciting? I'm going to make a guess that most of our moves from this classroom were probably due to our parents' jobs, right? Am I pretty much right on? Yeah, okay. So most of us, I think at this point, are going to be moving due to our parents like changing jobs, right? How many of us were born and raised here in Frisco? Like have been here forever? Okay, but like 6 of you out of the 32 of us that we have. That's not a whole lot, okay? So most of you have come from somewhere else, and I'm going to assume that is because your parents' jobs brought you to the Dallas area, right? And so then you settled in a suburb, okay? Why would people make a perilous journey? What does perilous mean? Dangerous. Dangerous. Why would people move if it was dangerous? Why, John?
Something happening in the country.
Like what?
Like wars.
Like war. Okay. Why else? Why would someone make a dangerous journey? Someone else, sorry.
Living environments.
Like what?
Like if you live in a area where there's a lot of poverty.
Of what?
Poverty. Maybe.
Poverty, okay. What would be another reason someone would make a perilous journey, a dangerous journey? Say it. What? Maybe not a reason for a dangerous journey. So why would someone risk their lives to leave?
Maybe it's a family member.
Are they a thief?
Ooh, maybe a dictatorship. Okay.
Yeah, maybe they robbed a bank and they want to hide.
Like they want to.
That's on them though. It's not going to be dangerous for them then to leave. Think about the journey being dangerous. If it's dangerous to leave, that means something must be pretty bad happening in your country, right? To make you leave. Remember, what were you going to say, Erin?
Oh, I was just gonna say like bad weather, like the tornado.
Not quite. We're gonna get to that later, so hold that thought. But think about it. If something is really bad happening in your country, that means you might want to leave, right? Allison, what? Disease. Yes, that's what I was waiting for. Actually, thank you. Disease. Okay. So what are some current reasons today? Why would people move today? We've already talked about one. Jobs. Avery, what did you say earlier? Maybe some better education. Okay. All right. So maybe a better life, right? Okay, so all reasons that people would move today. Okay, there's kind of a difference when things are dangerous and when things are okay. So that's what we're going to look at next. All right. This next slide kind of shows the difference, okay? When we're talking about forced migration means that somebody in power or someone who has authority is telling you to leave. So maybe like the government. Okay, like the government or someone is going to encourage you to leave or to force you to leave. Okay, someone who is maybe in power. Maybe that's not a government. Think back, what is one really big example from the early 1900s? Zach, I think you're on my same wavelength. What are you going to say?
Bin Laden.
Okay, that's more current. I'll get to that in a second. Think about early to mid 1900s. What was something that was a forced migration where people were made to move? Kian? What? No, not what I'm thinking, but I see where you're coming from. Parker, what's your guess? No, good guess. Brooke? Oh, good example, but we're going to get to that in a second. What's the one I'm thinking of, John?
World War?
Yeah, World War what?
Two.
And what happened in World War II?
People died in Nazi.
Hitler and Nazis, and who did they make move? The Jewish people, right? Okay, so think dictators here, right? Think people who are in power, okay? Think Nazis could be an example. Okay, so forced migration, when the Nazis forcibly removed the Jewish people from their homes, right? And they made them move, made them go to concentration camps. Most of the time they killed them, okay? So that's an example of forced migration. They were making them move, right? And then on the flip side, we have voluntary migration, which means that someone is choosing to leave, okay? It's their choice to leave, okay? So voluntary means that you are deciding to leave for any number of reasons, okay? Now, sometimes that next bullet point says that sometimes migration can be seen both ways. what that means is that sometimes people will argue, well, forced migration is still voluntary migration because you can refuse to leave somewhere, right? Or you can refuse not to leave somewhere. Like the Jews could have refused to leave when the Nazis told them, but what would have happened?
They would have shot.
Yeah, they would have probably, okay? They probably would have died on the spot. So personally, I think that they're two very different things. Like there's forced and then there's voluntary migration, because if you choose not to leave, like you could die, right? So in my opinion, personally, this is my thought, I think that they're two very different things. But some people do argue that at the end of the day, you can choose not to leave somewhere, even though that might result in you dying. To me, that's not much of a choice, because I feel like most people are going to want to live, right? You're going to want to move if that means you're going to survive. So in my mind, like that's considered forced migration. But sometimes people think, no, like that person will still have a choice whether or not they want to leave or not. Okay, so it really depends on how you look at it, but just know the difference between forced and voluntary. So forced is when someone's making you leave. Voluntary means that you're deciding to go on your own. Okay, makes sense? All right, and then we need to talk about immigrant and immigrant. We talked about this earlier a few weeks ago with our vocab words, but immigrant with an E means what? To exit the country. Thank you. Immigrant with an E means to exit the country. So if I were going to move to Mexico, I would be an immigrant with an E to the U.S. I would be an E immigrant to the U.S., right? Because I'm exiting the U.S., okay? But what's the opposite? What does immigrant with an I mean? Into, okay? So I would be an immigrant with an I to Mexico, right? So if I were writing a sentence, I would say, I'm an immigrant. Ooh, spelled it wrong. Immigrant to the U.S., but an immigrant with an I to Mexico. Makes sense, because I'm exiting the U.S., so that's with an E. But then I'm going into Mexico, so that's with an I. All right, makes sense? Easy. Immigrant with an E, exit. Immigrant with an I, into. All right, pretty simple. Got it?
Yep.
Okay, let's move on. You got it? I see people still writing. Okay, next slide. So here are some examples. A lot of you brought up really good examples a second ago, so let's talk about them. First one, of forced migration. So remember, this means that they are, this is bad. This is forced. This is not by choice. Okay? So when people didn't have a say in when they were moving, first example would be the slave trade, right? Europeans went and picked up the Africans in Africa and brought them over to Central and North America to be slaves. Do you think that they wanted to do that? No. Heck no. They wanted to stay in Africa, right? They didn't want to leave and go have to be workers for people that they didn't know, right? On a different continent, away from their family, didn't speak the language, didn't know the weather, didn't know anything, right? So that was a forced migration example. Great Britain shipped their convicts, so aka their prisoners, to Australia. So this was a prison colony to start off with. Did you know that? No. Let's think about the geography of Great Britain. Why did they resort to this? What is Great Britain? Were there a lot of people in Great Britain? No. Oh, think again. What type of country are they? Are they very powerful? Yeah, they've been pretty powerful for a really long freaking time, right? So, super powerful, lots of people there. They started the Industrial Revolution, right? They started a lot of things, right? Like, definitely world leader, okay? So, lots of people are in Great Britain. But what do you know about the geography of Great Britain? Do you know? It is small, and what else?
It's waterlogged.
Which means what?
It's
It's a Island. Okay, it's an island. Okay, so Great Britain is an island. It's not connected to the rest of Europe. If you see it up there, Aaron, stand up and point to Great Britain. Show where Great Britain is. You know where it is. Europe. Point to Europe. No, okay, to the left. Up. Find that island. Yes, there we go. That's Great Britain. Okay, so tiny, small island, super populated. So do they have room for all of the prisoners that they have? No, they wanted to continue to have land. So they put him on a boat, follow Aaron's hand. They're gonna put him on a boat, go around Africa and go to Australia. Boop. Boom, Australia. Okay? So that's where all of thank you, Aaron. Thank you for being my showgirl. So Australia was a colony of Great Britain. All right? That's where they shipped all of their prisoners to. Okay? So that way they could have more room, more land for people in the UK, in the United Kingdom. Okay? So those people were moved not by choice because they were prisoners. They put them on a ship and moved them to Australia. Okay? That's an example of forced migration. All right? Brooke, you brought up the, what'd you call it earlier? Yeah, Trail of Tears. With the Native Americans, right? So with the Trail of Tears, they moved the Native Americans to where? Where did they all move to? Yeah, a lot in Oklahoma, Midwest, okay? In the middle of the country on reservations, yes, okay? Who was the president again? I know you learned about this last year. Who did it?
Jackson? Yeah,
Jackson, yes, okay. Okay, good. And then we talked about the Nazi example already. And then the last thing you need to know is counter-migration. So counter-migration is when you try to leave a country. Okay, you try to migrate to a new country, but there might be rules set in place. There might be a limit on the number of people that they let in, whatever the case may be. If the country doesn't want you, for whatever reason, they can send you back to your country, okay? That's like called deportation, sending you back, okay? It's what deportation is, okay? So sending people back, that's called counter-migration, okay? So current examples, who brought up Bin Laden earlier? Zach, that was you? Okay, so going off of that, this is a little bit dated now, but if we're looking at current examples, Syria, Afghanistan, and Palestine, where are all those countries, by the way? Middle East, okay, all those places. Palestine isn't a country yet, but Palestinians are in Israel. In case you didn't know, we'll talk about it in Unit 4. Palestinians are in Israel, but all of those countries are in the Middle East, okay? So lots of conflict happening there, refugees, wars happening, people in Palestine, Palestinians in Israel, they're fighting over land. So they have Muslim Palestinians and Jewish Israelites, and so they're fighting over land. They've been fighting for a really long time. Okay, so that's why they're fighting. And then in Afghanistan and Syria, there are like militant extremist groups who have taken over or overthrown their government. And so like it's kind of questionable on who's in control, like these super military, like I won't say military, but like militant extremists, like bad guys, think bad guys, okay? They're like trying to overthrow and take over the country. And then there's just lots of bystanders who are thrown in the middle of that, right? Who aren't involved on either side, but a lot of people are dying because of the wars that are happening between everyone who's trying to take over, okay? So it's just bad situations in a lot of countries in the Middle East because of the war, because of the conflict. And so people are trying to get out, okay? So what we're going to talk about are these three things: refugees, asylum seekers, and IDPs. I think you guys have heard some of these words in our last few one-pagers, okay? But we're going to talk more about them. And I'm going to use different colors. So the first one we're going to talk about is internally displaced people. That's kind of our first step. So these are also called IDPs. What do these words mean? Internally, what does internally mean? Inside, okay. Displaced means what? Well, Tell me what displaced is. Don't just repeat the word. What, John?
It's like being like incorrectly placed somewhere, or being somewhere that you're not supposed to.
Yeah, so being somewhere maybe you're not supposed to be. When we're talking about migrants, we know that people are moving. What does displaced mean then? Are you in your home?
Traveling somewhere else.
Are you in your home? Yes. What'd you say, Zoe?
Traveling somewhere else.
Maybe not traveling, but you're somewhere else, okay? So if you're internally displaced, you're inside your country, but you're just not in your home, okay? So like you're not in your hometown, you're not in your home. So maybe you're not in Frisco, Texas, but you're internally displaced. So you're staying within the U.S., but you're just not in your home. What, John?
So would you say like homeless people are internally displaced people?
You could make an argument for that.
Cool.
You could make an argument for that, yeah. So internally displaced means that you're inside your country, but you're not at home. Okay? So something has happened to where you are leaving your home, but this is when you're not crossing a border, okay? So not crossing a border. So you're within your own country, but you're just not at home. What could be a current example of this happening in the U.S. aside from the homeless argument?
Maybe.
What, Allison?
Like if you're traveling.
No, because traveling is more like tourism. So you're displaced. So you're not you're having to live somewhere else because of something that's happened. Zoe?
Natural disasters.
Natural disasters, exactly. Okay, what happened last week in Florida? Hurricane, right? Last year in Houston, hurricanes, right? Sometimes people have to move here. Why? Not hurricanes here in Texas, North Texas. What happens? Tornadoes, right? We're at the southern part of Tornado Alley, right? What happens on the West Coast sometimes in California? Earthquakes, fires. Yeah, floods, okay? So sometimes people are IDPs even here in the U.S., even though, yes, we know that we're an MDC and we're really advanced. Sometimes we have IDPs because of the natural disasters that happen, right? When you can't live in your home for whatever reason. A tornado blew it down, there's flooding because of a hurricane, whatever it may be. You know, a lot of those people from Houston last year came to Dallas because they couldn't get in their home for a few weeks, right? So that's an IDP example, okay? When you're displaced from your home, but you're not crossing a border, right? They all stayed in the U.S. They weren't like going to Mexico. They were in the U.S. That's an example of an IDP, right? So you're staying within your country, but you're just not at home, okay? So that one's pretty easy to remember. Internally displaced, okay? The next step to this is asylum seekers. So asylum seekers, it can be kind of tricky to understand, but asylum means that you are getting protection from another country, okay? So you are in another country, and you want help from them, okay? But the thing with asylum seekers is that you don't really have paperwork, okay? So if you leave your country, say you're in Syria and you leave your country and you go into Turkey, there's this long process to try to become a citizen of another country. So those people who are leaving Syria, they don't want to go back, okay? When you're an asylum seeker, you're just trying to be protected so that way you don't have to go back. So if something really bad is happening in your country, you can apply for asylum. There's protection for you from this other, because of this other country. You're safe here in this country, okay? But the thing with asylum seekers is that they don't have documentation. They are not a citizen of that new country yet, and they're not even a refugee yet, okay? Asylum means that you're kind of stuck in limbo, so write that down. So when you're stuck in limbo, you don't have the rights like everybody else has, I guess, or you don't have the freedoms that everybody else has. So what happens when you're an asylum seeker, you typically will probably go into like a camp. Looks like it's probably fenced off, but it's a big camp, and it's probably just tents. Like, you're not in the best living conditions, but it's a place for you to go where you can stay in a tent. Usually like the UN, the US, or MDC countries will help fund to like provide food and those tents and water and clothes, but it's nothing fancy, right? It's like bare minimum because there are so many of these asylum camps. And so truly it's just kind of a holding place for these people. You can't work, you can't go buy a car, you can't buy a house, you can't go to school because you don't have any paperwork, you don't have any documentation. Your documents from Syria are not going to work in Turkey if you're in an IDP or if you're in a asylum camp, okay? So it's kind of like you're stuck. You're in a holding place. You can't really do much. You're waiting for your approval to become a refugee because that's our next step that we're about to get to. So until you become a refugee, you're kind of stuck in this middle place of just being in the middle of being an asylum seeker. You're just kind of in a holding place at a camp. Can't really do much, okay? So you're either waiting for refugee status from that country that you're in. Maybe you escaped from Syria and now you're in Turkey. Maybe you want to be a refugee in Turkey. But the problem is that everybody else who left Syria is also trying to do that. So maybe you're going to wait for refugee status from Germany or from France, maybe a more developed country. But however long that takes, it could take a really long time. You're going to be stuck in that camp, kind of in a holding phase. Okay, that's what asylum is. But you're going to be safe from the war and everything that's going on in Syria, but you just can't start like a new life yet. It's truly like a holding place. Okay? Does that make sense? Yes? Okay, it's important that you know the difference of these things, okay? Then the next step that we have is refugee status. So when you are a refugee status, you are documented, okay? So you have your paperwork. From a new country. Okay, and the idea behind this now is once you're a refugee, I guess the main idea is that you will eventually become a citizen of whatever country that is. You have to go through a class, you have to take a test, you have to, whatever the requirements are for that country, it's different in every country. The idea is for you to become a citizen, okay? Citizenship. Eventually, okay? So that's the main idea of a refugee. So those are our three kind of like stepping stones. You'll leave your house but stay in your country. That's an IDP. Once you leave and you become, you go into a new country and you have protection, you're an asylum seeker until you become a refugee when your paperwork is granted. And then you can start working. You can buy a house, you can buy a car, whatever it is. You can start moving on towards a better life in a different country. Okay? Does that make sense? Really important that you know these three differences. Okay? And then the bottom two that we have, below that, we have smuggled people and trafficked people. So smuggled people are going to be when you like pay someone to like illegally bring you into another country. So you might be hidden on a truck or in a trunk or something like that where you're trying to get into another country, but you know that you don't have paperwork and you're just trying to go to get there, okay? So you're trying to get across that like border patrol basically and get into the country, okay? So that would be smuggled people. Trafficked people can be a little bit... That's kind of rough. That is like when you're abducted. Someone is abducted or truly like stolen. Think of I don't know if you guys have seen Taken. Yes. It's kind of a scary movie. I don't like thinking about it. But when you are truly abducted, right? Like taken against your will and you can be sent to a different country to like be sold for a numerous of different reasons. Most of them are pretty gross. But for not good reasons, okay? You're taken against your will. All of these things these are all forced migrations, right? Like not willingly going. Maybe smuggled people, I guess. But for the most part, these are all forced migrations, okay? Against your own will. Okay? Make sense? Okay. So, next one. We're almost there, people. Let's talk about push and pull factors. So push factors are going to be negative reasons. These go along with voluntary migration, by the way. So this is when people are choosing to leave. Push factors are going to be because of negative reasons. These are centrifugal forces with an F. These are negative things. So this would make a person want to leave a country. Why? What are some examples of a reason why people would want to leave? Yes.
No jobs.
Yeah, no jobs. What else?
War.
War. What else?
Bad economy.
Yep, bad economy. That's one. That's a good one.
Corrupt government.
Mm-hmm. Corrupt government. What else?
No religious freedom.
Okay, persecution. Avery, what'd you say earlier? Yeah. What were we talking about earlier?
What I said?
Yeah, what'd you say? Long time ago.
The only thing I said was education.
Okay, there we go. Why would someone want to leave then?
To get a better education.
Okay, what'd be the push factor?
Bad education.
Bad education. Thank you. What else? Lots of reasons here. Parker?
Well, I guess this is kind of go like under like town or city, but like crime.
Yeah, crime. I'll take crime. That's a good one. What else? What are other bad reasons people would want to leave? Emily?
Bad healthcare.
Ooh, yes, yes, I love it. Healthcare. Okay. Can we think of anything else?
Poverty.
John? Poverty? Okay, so lots of reasons, right? So let's go down. Those are all push factors, right? Bad reasons. Those are reasons why you would want to leave your country, okay? So the opposite of that then is pull factors. So these are positive things to bring you into another country. This is a centripetal force with a P, okay? For positive, centripetal force, okay? So what would be, for every push factor, there's an opposite and equal pull factor, okay? So all of those push factors that we just listed, let's talk about the opposite pull factors then that would want you to come into their country. Parker?
Lots of job opportunities.
Yeah, lots of jobs. What else? Justin?
No war.
Yeah, no war or peace, okay? Peace could take off war and crime, right? That'd be peace. Who else? Riley?
Good education.
Yeah, good education. Okay. Good education opportunities. Yasmin?
Safe. Like.
Yeah, peace or let's do safety as one. Okay. Zoe?
Religious freedom.
Yeah, so freedoms, right? Jeffrey?
This isn't listed, but cheaper land.
Okay, that could have been along with the push factor at the top if it was really expensive, okay? What's the opposite of corrupt government?
Good government.
A good government, right? A good government. Opposite of bad economy?
Great economy.
Good economy, right? What else? No jobs. I think we did a lot of these. Oh, healthcare. Good healthcare, right? Lots of doctors, okay? So there's always going to be an opposite pull factor for all the push factors, okay? So if one country is doing pretty bad at something, they're going to have push factors pushing you away from that country, right? But at the same time, there's going to be other countries that will pull you towards them for all of the pull factors, okay, that we have listed down here, right? So if you're wanting to leave a country, that means you're going to want to go into a country that does whatever it is better, right? So there's always going to be opposites, push and pull factors, okay? Makes sense? Pretty easy to understand, okay? So voluntary migration. These are people wanting to leave on their own, okay? Oh, shoot. Oh, here we go. Okay. Lastly, we talked about a lot of these with economics, political circumstances, conflict. We talked about the natural disasters with the tornadoes and the hurricanes, okay? Those could be push and pull factors, right? Some people might not want to live in Tornado Alley. I hate tornadoes, but where did I go to school? Oklahoma State. How many tornadoes did I ever have to get into? A lot. Like, had to go to the first floor all the time and freak out when there were bad storms. Shouldn't have lived there, but I did. But then all my Oklahoma friends thought it was really cool, and they'd like sit out on the back porch and like watch the tornadoes form, which that's stupid. But whatever, right? Like you all have your own whatever you like, right? Like I'll never live on a beach, unfortunately, because I won't want to leave every summer because of the hurricanes, right? So you weigh your options, okay, on where you want to go, how you move, where you live, right? And then the last thing on here is culture and traditions. So most of the time, just in history, it's just natural for us to be pulled towards people who are like us, right? So have the same cultural traditions and values. It's even like that here in Frisco with the different pockets of people, different demographics in Frisco. It happens right here. But even more so on a larger scale, and we're going to get into culture a lot next unit in Unit 3. It's my favorite unit when we get to talk about all of the cultural differences. But people tend to group next to who they're like, right? So the example given here is in India. So India was another colony of Great Britain. And whenever Great Britain pulled out of India, there were a lot of different types of people there, mostly Muslims and Hindus, okay? So there was a big war fought over it. I'm really watering this down, but at the end, they pretty much split into Hindu India and Muslim Pakistan. So most of the Muslims went to Pakistan, and most of the Hindus went to India, and that's just right now, like those are the overwhelmingly majority of those countries, because we typically tend to group towards people who are alike, okay? And that falls under cultural traditions, okay? Does that make sense? It'll make more sense when we talk about it next unit too, okay? So what we're going to do now is if you can open these links, great. But the second thing that I posted on Classroom along with these notes is the Migration Stations worksheet. And so you guys are going to go through and fill that out. This morning it was a nightmare because none of the links worked. So if your links are still not working, they probably are not. I printed out packets, or not packets, but I printed out copies of most of the stations. So you're going to have to go through the hard copies, so that means you guys are going to have to go sit up at the tables and share. Okay, you can work with one partner only, okay? But share all the documents that I put on there. I numbered them for what station they go along with, so you're going to fill out that document. I couldn't print out like one of like the first thing on part A, or the first station. I think it's 1A I couldn't print out, and then I couldn't print out all of the stuff for Station 2, but I did print out 2 examples that you can pull from. So you're going to work on this for the next 30 minutes until we're out of class. You're not going to be able to turn this in because it's not going to be complete, because you're not going to have all of this stuff because the internet sucks today. So what I told my class earlier is you guys are going to turn this in on Friday, okay? We're not going to work on this on Thursday because we have to move on. We're going to look at Syria more in depth on Thursday. So we won't have class time to do this, so you guys will need to do this on your own for the rest of the week and turn it in by Friday, okay, at 5 when one-pagers are due, all right? So you can get a lot of it done because I printed out most of it for you. So go sit at a table. You can work with a partner, but y'all share the documents at your table. The bonus stations down at the bottom, if you do those 2, you can get up to 10 extra points. You'll get 10 extra points on this assignment, okay? I printed out that 5B is a really long, it's a longer article, so I only printed out 3 of those, and I spread them out across the room. So you'll have to share. I wrote the numbers at the top of the document so you know what station it goes with, okay? So that's what we're doing the rest of class. Ready? Great.